Iowa basketball picks up win number 1 of the season as they roll past Texas A&M Commerce in the home opener. Plus, we talk quarterbacks. The depth chart is out. Brennan Sullivan back to QB1 today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit that subscribe button. It just takes a moment and helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, we got to see the Iowa men's basketball team in action for the first time officially. Of course, the exhibition game that we touched on a little bit a week ago from Friday against Minnesota Duluth. This was a step up in competition, maybe. Texas A&M Commerce just in their third season now at the Division I level. They're still going through the transition, and they're not very good. This is a team that Iowa probably should have rolled by more. The point spread, 32 points, was the closing line in this one. Iowa does not get the cover. It was a very uneven effort from this basketball squad. Now, I don't think this is any time to hit the panic button. As we've talked about the men's basketball team this year, I believe they're going to be an NCAA tournament team. I think there are the pieces in place that they're going to be certainly in the top half of the Big Ten this season, and maybe even fighting for the top third. I think that's a realistic goal for this group, what they have returning, starting with Payton, Sanford, Owen, Freeman. That 1-2 punch is going to win a lot of basketball games for this squad, certainly throughout the course of this year. But the effort at times was uneven. You had some rotations that were a little bit off, but I think there are some highlight moments in this one and some big takeaways. We go back to that exhibition game, and I thought the execution and what we saw out of what they were doing was very odd in an exhibition game where you saw the starters playing so many minutes. Not the case here. They evened it out a little bit more. And though you got to see Payton Sanford out there playing 31 minutes in the game. Josh Dix, he was at 29 minutes, and that's good to see. Get those guys out there, and you're going to need them. We got to see a little bit more of the bench, and I think most importantly, we got to see Drew Thelwell, the backup point guard. Drew Thelwell comes in from Morehead State, and I thought it was incredibly telling what Fran McCaffrey said in the post game about Drew Thelwell. We were wondering, kind of why he didn't play very much against Minnesota Duluth, single-digit minutes in that game. And Fran mentioned that he's coming in to a new system and playing a different way. What they did in the past, what he did at Morehead State, and he left the all-time wins leader in program history, but they were set up in a way where it was a lot of sets. It was not the motion offense that we see, why year after year Iowa plays at such a high level, and he just wasn't comfortable. I think there were times you still saw that from Drew Thelwell. You saw a guy that kind of beating the ball a little bit too much out front, not getting that quick pass and get the motion offense going and get it out to a wing. And all right, let's start moving. Let's get guys cutting. Let's do those things that I was so good at year in and year out. And you can still see that from time to time. But when he got going, he got into that flow, you saw what a big level player he can be for this Iowa basketball team. Brock Harding is going to be a fan favorite. Brock Harding has a lot of good traits, and most importantly, what an elite level passer that he is and just finding open guys. He's going to rack up a ton of assists in his Iowa career, and he's going to have some monster performances himself. But he's also limited. He's limited physically in what he is. He's not a big guy, and that's never going to change. We're not talking about your prototypical, big, solid, sturdy point guard. You're thinking about even smaller point guards, like the Gary Payton types, right? Guys like that still also had some dog in him, some toughness, those kind of things. And that's not to say he doesn't have that component, but there are going to be certain matchups for Brock Harding that he's going to be overwhelmed. He's going to be overwhelmed physically by certain types of point guards and what teams do. And now you have a competent backup in Drew Thelwell that can come in, and in those moments, he can do some things for you. He can turn the corner much better and finish. He can do the kind of things that you need at the point guard position. You need that. I believe that it should not be, if you're talking point guard and you're just splitting it up amongst those two guys, that it should be 75% for Harding, 25% Thelwell. I don't think it's 50-50, but maybe a 60-40 split, something like that. I think that's where you're going to be looking at. And yeah, they'll have Josh Dix play the point in a pinch. They're going to do some different things in that avenue. But Drew Thelwell stepping up in a big way in the first official game. I thought that was one of my biggest takeaways from what we saw tonight. The big guys, center Owen Freeman and Lachey DeBale. And I have this question as we see Cooper Koch, and we're going to get to Cooper here momentarily. You watch, going back to that exhibition game, Traore, who was out in this game. And I just am left wondering. Right now, the backup center is Evan Bronze. And we saw Evan Bronze a year ago. He's a body that can come in. He's athletic. And he's certainly got leaping ability, but he's 5 fouls. Maybe that's his role. Come in there, play tough, play physical, do those kind of things. That's what he is. There's limitations to his game. And if maybe Iowa would be better off, and certainly if we see Seydou Traore kind of elevate his game throughout the course of the season, or we see Cooper Koch become more comfortable. If you go that direction and Lachey DeBale becomes also your backup center, and you're playing him that way. Yeah, you're still going to play him at the 4, but you go that direction. And maybe even that means DeBale comes off the bench. It's something to keep an eye on. Lachey DeBale is never shy, right? He gets the ball. He's got an opening. He's going to be aggressive. And he loved that aggressiveness. We saw that same aggressiveness tonight from Price Sanford, which was good to see out of a young guy, and certainly something we didn't see a ton from him a year ago. You'd love to see Josh Dix maybe take a little bit off of those guys and the aggressiveness that you see. But that aside, DeBale still at times looks a tad slow, a little bit outmanned, and wondering maybe a bench role will be something better from him. But just a fleeting thought from the game. Mentioned Payton Sanford. He stuck a big performance together again. He finishes 7 of 14 from the field, 4 3-pointers in the game. He goes 4 and 9, 11 rebounds. He's such a good rebounder. Speaking of physical limitations, we know that Payton Sanford is not an elite level athlete. And we saw that show up at the NBA draft combine as he had one of the lowest totals as it pertains to some of those physical measurements and physical abilities that he has. But he's just such a heady basketball player. And even with those limitations, understanding angles, understanding how to get to the ball at 11 rebounds in this one. And on top of it, he had 7 assists in the game. And that was definitely an eye-opener. 6 assists in the game for Brock Harding as well. Josh Dix, he got going a little bit. Didn't shoot it great from the outside, just 1 of 5 from 3. Those 3-pointer felt like a big one. He was able to help out, though, in a couple of different ways. Good defender out there. But I think it's more than anything about some of the bench guys. I mean, Owen Freeman was Owen Freeman. Against an outmanned team, he did what he was supposed to do. Still, he has to stay away from those silly fouls. It's just, and you see him reaching at times. There are times he gets away with it. But, boy, he just has to be so smart out there, as we definitely know. Mentioned Cooper Koch. And Cooper finishes, hits a 3-pointer, looked beautiful. I mean, he just got a beautiful looking stroke. But watching him out there, the game is still a tick fast at the D1 level. Another guy that's not going to wow you with athleticism, but you just see his basketball IQ. You just see the way that he plays, the way that he anticipates things. You can tell that this is going to be a really high IQ basketball player, and definitely excited about the future of Cooper Koch. I mentioned Price Sanford. He was going off. He had 3 3-pointers. Shot a ton of them, 3 of 9 from behind the arc, and I want to see those numbers get a little bit closer together than the 6 missed 3-pointers overall. But he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be that kind of guy. We saw Chris Taggio for the first time. He did not play in the exhibition game. He was out there and looking like the athlete that we anticipated. He, in fact, fired up a 3. Didn't look bad at it either. It was off the mark. But overall, just a game where Iowa certainly wasn't at their best. Iowa was not playing a high-level team, and it's going to happen again on Thursday. But I think there are enough good moments in this one. And really what took it away and what opened this thing up, what was a relatively tight game, was the defense. Forced 22 turnovers, 13 steals in the game. And the biggest difference maker was when Iowa slapped on the press there in the early portions of the second half, about 13 minutes to go. And they're forcing turnovers and getting out and running and doing what they need to do. Iowa's not going to be a great defensive team, but can they be a competent defensive team? That is going to be the difference with this Iowa basketball team. If they can finish, say, in the top 6 of the Big Ten this year, or if they're fighting on the bubble once again this season. You don't have to be great defensively, but if they can be okay, and I think the pieces are there that they're going to be able to do that throughout the course of this season. Rebounding needs to be there. It's got to be a team effort once again with this group this year, but excited about this Iowa basketball team as they get number 1 against Texas A&M Commerce. I know BTN Plus, not a lot of people jump aboard with the pay service for that one. Was happy to be able to watch it, though, and we'll be able to do the same with the women's basketball team with a couple of these non-conference games. We got some news and notes coming up, including one on Iowa women's basketball. But as we continue, let's talk some football. Let's get into the depth chart that was released, and QB1 remains the same. Still Brennan Sullivan. We'll talk about the quarterback position as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Hey, Hawkeye fans, it's time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week, I'm supporting Brennan Sullivan. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Brennan Sullivan the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the referral code. It's locked on, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and on X at Roy _return on you for more information. Roy, support the players, change the game. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you're taking a look at the way the game is going, you know what? I want to see if this is actually matching up with what my eyeballs are seeing. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. On the same page where you place your bets, having that info in front of you, incredibly important in the live betting market. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's on FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hey, hit that subscribe button if you haven't. If you're watching on YouTube, 5-star reviews on the podcast side helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Let's get into some football here as the depth chart was released today. Game notes come out. Then on Tuesday, we will get the press conference from Kirk Ferentz, hopefully get a little more information exactly what's the latest on Cade McNamara coming back off the concussion, because the depth chart did not have Cade McNamara on there. Once again, it was Jackson Stratton as the backup, the walk-on that came in from Colorado State. He is the backup quarterback, and of course, that means Brennan Sullivan is the starter. Now, we saw it on Saturday night against Wisconsin, just what having a quarterback that can run does for this run game. Iowa piling up over 300 yards rushing against Wisconsin, and boy, did that feel oh so good. But I think it was described incredibly well during the broadcast, and he saw the way that it is. I mean, that backside defensive end. And how many times, if you've been listening to me for years, you're an everydayer, you know, I complained about years and years and years, the old zone blocking scheme, and Iowa's inability as cut blocking was taken away from the game now 7-8 years ago, that Iowa didn't have a counterpunch. There was nothing that they would do in order to slow things down. They didn't have a mobile quarterback. They didn't have a guy on a zone read that could actually keep it and pick that up. And now with Brennan Sullivan out there, you see that defensive end or that outside linebacker, even a safety that's coming up into the box and playing outside. You see those guys, they're not able to just crash down hard on the running back. And it creates even more running lanes. It creates an opportunity for Caleb Johnson. As we know, all it takes is a seam and he is off to the races. And we saw that on Saturday. Even as it wasn't the night where he's ripping off 25, 35, 50-yard runs that we've seen in the past, but it was just every single time they were able to do it. Also got to give credit to that offensive line. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we will dive a little bit deeper into the win against Wisconsin and take a look at the numbers from Pro Football Focus. But Brendan Sullivan's number one. And I understand the angst, and I continue to hear it from all kinds of people that just have this concern that we're going to see Kirk Ferentz once again go back to Cade McNamara. And I understand there's been quarterback decisions that have been frustrating. There's been quarterback decisions that leave you scratching your head. It takes longer to get there than it eventually does. But just go back to the last conversation that we had like this with Alex Padilla and Spencer Petras. And eventually, it was Padilla's job. And after Petras went out and Padilla came in, Padilla kept that job until he was not good. And he played poorly in the first half against Nebraska, and then they ultimately made a change. And we could see something very similar here. Again, we have to see what it's going to look like and what the conversation is going to be at Cade McNamara. Is he going to be ready to go by Friday? We're still talking about a concussion. We're talking about a brain injury. And for some guys, that takes longer to get back from. That takes longer than just a week. And it could be multiple weeks. We've seen that happen plenty of times with football players in the past. It was great to see Cade McNamara was locked in. He was involved. He was out there. He was not pouting. He was not sulking. He was not doing the things that maybe there were concerns about. That's not the case. He was being a good teammate. He was doing exactly what you want to see as your backup quarterback or a guy that was unavailable in the game against Wisconsin, yet still being involved and being a part of it. And I think you're going to see that even if he's back and able to dress and able to be the backup quarterback. Kirk's going to make the right decision. Maybe I'm just trying to talk it into existence. He's going to make the right decision. Here's another one from the depth chart. No Luke Lachey. So a couple of weeks ago, he got banged up against Northwestern, didn't play in the blowout late as he left the game with an injury. Of course, a week ago, we didn't see him. So down Addison Estrenga, down Luke Lachey. And this is a little bit concerning against a UCLA team that has been playing much better over the last month. I know a lot of people were throwing dirt on him when he saw Deshaun Foster and the opening remarks at conference media days back in July. That was head scratching. And then you see them get off to the slow start, struggle against Hawaii, get blown out by Indiana, and everybody said it's over. I've been watching this UCLA team. And even against Penn State, now they hung around for a while. And of course, they had their breakthrough then a week ago as they get the win against Nebraska. This is a team that can stop the run. And this is a team that has a mobile quarterback in Garbers. They've been able to move the football through the air. Iowa has given up some plays, as we know, throughout the course of the year, in the air, and some big plays throughout the course of the season. They're going to be wearing some throwback unis, some beautiful baby blues that they're going to have out there on the field. And this will be the first meeting for the Hawkeyes against UCLA since 1986. Yes, the infamous Rodney Harmon Rose Bowl game with fumbles all over the field. Iowa loses it, 45-28, if memory serves. One of my earliest memories of Iowa football was that 1985 season. A lot of high water marks and a lot of disappointment in the end, the way that one went in the Rose Bowl. Iowa gets a return to the Rose Bowl. Hopefully they have the right cleats. Hopefully they're good to go in the short week. I believe I mentioned this on yesterday's program. I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but one avenue where, look, I've had this game as an L going back before the season. I didn't think UCLA was going to be very good. In fact, I bet them under their win total of 4.5 on the FanDuel app. However, I had concerns because it's a trip to the West Coast. The one thing that I really do like about Iowa in this spot is not the trip to the West Coast, because we know in general teams have struggled going multiple time zones this year. It's not as immense as it was in the early portion of the season when it's something 1 and 8. I think teams traveling 2 or more time zones in the Big Ten was at that point in time, and that's starting to even up a little bit more. However, Iowa playing every single year on Black Friday, having that quick turnaround and the way that they have to do it year after year after year, and Kirk Ferentz obviously been involved in each and every one of them. I do believe that that gives Iowa at least a little bit of an advantage in this one. They're not going to go out a day early. They're not going to do anything like that. They're not going to move practice times, I don't believe, this week and start practice in the afternoon for it. They've gone through this before. Now, they haven't gone through it with a night game, as we're going to see with this one, but I think they're going to be ready. And I think this is going to be a team that still sees attainable goals, still sees an opportunity to put together another nice season and an opportunity to run the table again in November. Iowa now 18-1 in their last 19 November games. Just absolutely incredible the way that this team year after year after year seems to be peaking at the right time. That's what you want to be doing. You want to be playing your best football at the end of the season and find ways to get victories. Is it always pretty? No, it's not. But they've been victories, and this season has been much prettier. Speaking of that, got some numbers for you, some Iowa football numbers, plus Sydney Falter had knee surgery. She might be out there on Wednesday as the Iowa women will open up their season. Some Hawkeye news and notes as we continue football, basketball, and a little bit more. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel better. Look, you know that we get ready for the tailgate. It's going to be a long day. And I was a little bit on the fence about a pre-alcohol initially. But while we're hanging out at the tailgate or just going out with some friends, I decided to give it a shot. And believe me, it's the real deal. Here's how you want to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step number 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and make sure you get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lockedoncollege and make sure you use the code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off at checkout. Trent Condon back with you one final time. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Hit that subscribe button, 5-star review. Help us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. All right, wrapping things up here today. Couple of hard hitters, some numbers that I wanted to pass along for things that have been in my notebook over the last couple of days that we haven't get to. Here's one. This from Blair Sanderson of Hawkeye Report. Offensively, Iowa has gone from ranking 126 in the country in third down conversion a year ago 29.4% last season. This year, how about this? 31st in the country in third down conversion rate, 45%. That is a huge step up from Iowa. Here's a couple other numbers for you. Iowa's offense a year ago. Rushing. We know the pass game was hideous. Rushing, and it's not great this year. 115th, though, last year. 109th in the country. 115 yards per game. That was 109th. Points per game, 132nd. Average 15.4 points per game. Yards per play, 3.96, 133rd. This year, the offense ranks 10th in the country in rush offense, 222 yards per game. They were 109th last year. Points per game were 132nd. They have doubled their production. Now, 30.8 points per contest for Iowa this year. That's 45th in the country. Yards per play, 5.87 per play. That is tied for 67th in the country. That from Mitch Fick, good numbers out of him and really eye openers as it pertains to what this Iowa team is doing and what they have a chance to be going forward. Wrapping things up here on our news and notes, Caleb Johnson, congratulations to him. He was named Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. Also, I saw Jennings Dunker was the highest rated tackle a week ago in college football for what he did in the win against Wisconsin. Again, we will get those numbers to you tomorrow as we recap things one final time before we look ahead in the quick week and the quick turnaround against UCLA. Mentioned the men's basketball team, talked about the opener Wednesday. It will be the ladies out there on the hardwood. The Iowa women's basketball team goes out there for the first time in 4 years without Caitlin Clark. And it's going to be weird. It's going to be odd. Even going back to the exhibition game, it was just watching a little bit of that. It felt weird. It just felt unlike what we've grown accustomed to. And people that have been listening to me for years in my radio days, you know that I've always been a strong advocate for girls sports at the high school level and women's sports, and have followed this Iowa women's basketball team for a very long time. One of my roommates in college, he's been a close member of the women's basketball team for a number of years, and because of that, always followed along, always watched very closely, and this team's going to be good. You see, they're going to play different. Lucy Olson is a completely different type of point guard than what you get out of Caitlin Clark because Caitlin Clark is 101. You start right there. But I think this team has a chance to be really good. And it will be interesting to see Jan Jensen now in this new role, becoming the boss. Not being everybody's friend, but having to be tough at times, how that's going to go. And when adversity hits, and it's not going to be the smooth sailing that we've seen for the most part over the last couple of seasons for this program, of how they're going to respond. That's something that I keep an eye on. But great news that Sydney Falter looks like she's going to be able to play a little bit, at least get a little bit of minutes out on the hardwood for her in the opener against Northern Illinois. That will be good to see. Get her out there as Iowa's schedule. And they got some toughies in there again this year. And Iowa usually plays a pretty competitive schedule overall. You know, their bye games are not against the dregs of college basketball like what happens on the men's side. The bye games for the most part are higher level teams, and there's just a little bit more to the schedule. Need to hit the ground running, and obviously a Falter is going to be a big part of that. Really like what we saw in the exhibition game by a number of the freshmen. I think there's a chance that Ava Hayden got a lot of the headlines, but Stremlo, she's going to be able to help out. McGaney also going to be another one. So it's going to be a team that's, again, built differently, but they're going to be good. Hannah Stolkey has a chance to be not just all Big Ten, maybe even All-American good. I think she has that kind of upside. Going to be fun to see her and Lucy Olson out there. McCabe is such a good shooter from the outside and has proved so much on the defensive end of the floor on top of it from what she once was. Really liked what we saw out of Feuerbach in the exhibition game. So overall, the pieces are there for this team to be very competitive. Again, mentioned top half of the Big Ten, top third of the Big Ten on the men's side. I think that's a realistic goal as well. At minimum, this be a top third team, top 6 in the Big Ten. And I think the upside is there for them to be even better than that. We'll get to see them on Wednesday evening. We'll recap it as we do for you here each and every day. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. And thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hey, for your second listen, make sure you check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sheeman puts the Big Ten first, gives you all the great information, and goes 1 through 18 through the Big Ten. How weird was it tonight? Big Ten Network watching a little USC basketball. Boy, just odd, just like it was on Saturday night watching Washington and USC play on the Big Ten Network. That aside, Craig's got you covered. The Locked On Big Ten podcast. You can find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. One final look back at Wisconsin, the numbers from Pro Football Focus. Hope to chase down Biz this week. He's been the good luck charm, 4-0 when he's been able to join us during the course of the week. We'll hope to get him on here before we get to Friday. Friday, it will be game day. 8 o'clock kickoff on Big Fox, Iowa UCLA from the Rose Bowl. And hope everybody heading out there has a wonderful time. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.